Ragnar Lodbrok and the fall of Paris. Paris believed the Seine was a shield. Ragnar turned it into a road. In the spring of 845, a dark line appeared beyond the river bends. It stretched across the water until the Seine seemed covered in timber, shields, sails, and iron. 120 Viking ships drove inland, carrying thousands of warriors toward the richest prize in West Francia. Frankish scribes wrote down the name of their commander, Ragnar. Centuries later, saga-tellers folded that name into the legend of Ragnar Lodbrok. No document from 845 confirms the two men were one and the same, but whichever name is his, the war leader on the Seine that spring knew exactly where to strike. Charlemagne's empire had shattered. Rival kings fought over its remains. Charles the Bald ruled West Francia, but his soldiers could not protect every river, town, monastery, and royal estate at once. Ragnar did not challenge the whole kingdom. He aimed for its heart. The longships made the attack possible. Their shallow hulls could enter water that trapped heavier vessels. Crews sailed when the wind rose, rowed when it died, landed along open banks, and launched again before Frankish troops could surround them. The Seine became a Viking highway. The fleet struck Rouen and surged onward. Smoke climbed behind it. Settlements emptied. Messengers raced toward Paris carrying one terrifying warning: the Northmen were coming. Speed became Ragnar's first weapon. Each mile upstream denied Charles time to gather an army. Raids along the banks supplied the warriors, weakened local resistance, and spread fear ahead of the fleet. Charles finally assembled his forces near the Seine. He divided them between the two river banks, hoping to block both sides at once. That decision opened the road to Paris. The two Frankish divisions were unequal. One stood exposed on the weaker bank, while the stronger force waited across the river. Ragnar refused to attack both. He concentrated everything against one. Longships surged toward the shore. Oars hammered the water. Warriors poured from the vessels and struck the isolated Frankish division before help could reach it. Shields cracked under axe blows. Spear points found the gaps in the shield wall. The line broke, and the men holding it broke with it. The stronger Frankish force watched from the opposite bank, unable to cross in time. Ragnar had turned the river against the men who believed it would protect them. The Vikings captured 111 Frankish soldiers. The prisoners were hanged from an island in the Seine, an offering to Odin, and a warning to every Frank still watching from the far bank. The killings carried a message sharper than any blade. One Frankish division had already been destroyed. Another attack would bring the same fate to the rest. Fear crossed the Seine where reinforcements could not. Frankish resistance collapsed. Ragnar pushed upstream before Charles could reunite his forces. There were no months spent battering walls with siege towers. That grinding siege belonged to a different assault on Paris 40 years later. In 845, speed and terror did the work that towers would later do. Paris heard the fleet before it saw the warriors. Oars struck in rhythm. Hulls crowded the river. War cries rolled across the water as the ships approached the island settlement and the religious communities around it. The Vikings reached Paris during Easter. Church bells rang while worshippers gathered. Wealth filled churches and monasteries. Silver vessels, decorated books, sacred ornaments, food stores, and precious cloth. Whether he had planned the timing or simply seized what the calendar handed him, Easter magnified the terror. Panic erupted. Families fled with whatever they could carry. Clergy rushed to hide relics and treasure. Doors slammed, boats pushed away from the banks. Ragnar gave the city no time to recover. Warriors stormed ashore and swept through Paris. Doors splintered. Storehouses burst open. Monasteries and churches surrendered wealth gathered over generations. Smoke rolled above the rooftops while the Vikings seized silver, gold, supplies, captives, and anything valuable enough to load aboard the ships. Paris had not stopped them. Charles had not stopped them. The Sacred Heart of West Francia lay open beneath Viking steel. Victory brought a new enemy. Disease spread through the Viking camp. Warriors who had survived the river assault and the Frankish battle began collapsing without a wound. Every day in Paris increased the danger. Every ship loaded with treasure became heavier and more valuable. Frankish reinforcements could still gather beyond the city. A reckless commander might have remained until pride destroyed the army. Ragnar changed tactics. He turned occupation into negotiation. The Vikings held Paris while the threat of further destruction hung over the kingdom. Ragnar did not need to conquer every fortress. He needed Charles to understand that continued resistance would cost more than peace. The demand reached the king, 7,000 livres in gold and silver. Charles faced a battered army, a plundered city, and a Viking fleet still capable of escaping down the Seine. He paid. The payment was not mercy, it was the price of failure. Treasure filled the ships. Captives and plunder were loaded beside the ransom. Ragnar kept the warriors together and withdrew along the river that had carried them into the kingdom. The escape route had never been abandoned. The ships remained a transport, supply line, mobile fortress, and path home. The Vikings struck again while descending toward the sea, proving that Charles had purchased their departure from Paris, not defeated them. The fleet returned with its army intact and its hulls heavy with wealth. Ragnar's victory came through a chain of calculated decisions. He exploited a fractured kingdom. He used shallow draft ships to penetrate deep inland. He moved faster than the defenders could gather. He attacked the weaker half of a divided army. He used terror to break the courage of the survivors. He transformed a dangerous occupation into an enormous ransom. He protected the retreat from the first stroke of the oars to the final voyage home. Paris survived. Its illusion of safety did not. The bells eventually stopped. The fires burned down. Charles remained king. Across the north, however, a greater story began to spread. A Viking fleet had entered the Seine. A royal army had been shattered. Paris had been seized, and a Christian king had been forced to pay. Ragnar's warriors had sailed home, undefeated. The rivers of Europe no longer protected the kingdoms beside them. They pointed the way in.